Good morning, everyone. I want to start with an explanation of how I don't belong here. In 2005, we built an application with colleagues from the humanities, which we called Campus Mysteries. Eventually, you know it as Pokemon Go. It was exactly the same thing. You would go around and you look at all these weird ghosts. They had interesting lives. You collected them. They told you stories about the building. Great idea. We wrote a paper. It was not even in a good venue. Around the same time, with colleagues in computing science, nursing, industrial design, we built the smart condo. You go into the condo, it is instrumented, and the condo knows exactly what you're doing. We have a very cool video of our student, Julia Vlasenko, walking around, and we simulate exactly what Julia is doing. We know exactly what she's doing without cameras. In 2018, more recently, we built an application called Kaleidoscope. Now, recently, I don't know how long Google has it, but as you drive around, it tells you whether there are accidents, and then it asks you to confirm that there is an accident, there is an obstruction on the road. So that was Kaleidoscope circa 2018. So these are all my encounters, almost encounters with entrepreneurial success. So with this background, I met Mo, and Mo was very interested in doing something with Internet of Things and the data that we have been working with in the lab. So I'll tell you one more story, which actually happened just before I had to develop the presentation, and it was perfectly an explanation for why I was late in preparing my presentation. So, oh yeah, okay, I do not know how to use this. So we went to Calgary for a similar event for Spark Alberta. It's myself and one of my research associates. We're carrying a very big suitcase that has about 3 Oculus devices, bunch of wires, bunch of tablets. The suitcase is heavy, and we have to park and go to the HRIC atrium. I haven't been recently in Calgary, and I have not been in this building, so we do Google Maps, obviously. So we are parked there, and we have to go there. You see the blue dots. So I'm not going to even try. Can I try? Oh, look at me. Like so close, but no cigar. Anyway, Foothills parking lot, that's the HRIC. We get the instructions. It's about 9 minutes walking, and we have a horrible suitcase. So we chanced it, and we did that. Pink dots. This is like 3 minutes, and it is indoor, and the suitcase is not going on the ground, and it is perfect. So this is exactly what we have been doing in the context of this activity. We have built a model, and we'll call it digital twin because why not, of the campus that relies on open data and the power of mobile sensors on the phones that are not, how do you put it? That are networked. And we built a really useful service. And that was our idea. Here's what we need to do in order to make this happen. By the way, it works. So we need 3 things. The first is to have a model. And the model is supposed to have enough information to cover the map of the campus and also the interior of the buildings. You need to have the opportunity, capacity to do path planning. And path planning has to happen both outside, like we all know with Google Maps, and also inside the building. So inside the building, you have to know the corridors, the staircases, the elevators, the offices, the interesting spaces. And you also have to know the names of the spaces and possibly the occupants of the spaces, because I do not know how else to access this atrium except but its name, which is HRIC, atrium. It doesn't have a number. It does not have an indication of its address. And the last thing you have to do is actually to take the person as they're walking around with a big ugly suitcase from the parking lot to the atrium. So let me tell you what we had to do for these 3 steps. By the end of the presentation, I will know how to use this. So how do you build a digital twin? You need a map. Now, many of us are tempted to use Google Maps. It's such a useful and functional service. But in my lab, we make an extensive effort to work with open data. OpenStreetMaps is an extremely valuable resource. It's crowdsourced data that exists for many spaces, many cities, even small towns like Beaumont. We did an experiment. And there is very rich data for Edmonton. So we used OpenStreetMaps, and what we get there for free is building footprints, and in many cases the names and the occupants of the buildings, coordinates of corners and the main interesting points of the building footprints, the heights of the buildings, and of course also street names, directions of movement, and actually sizes of sidewalks, because that's interesting for pedestrian walking. So OpenStreetMaps gives us the city or the campus. Now, we need building models. These are valuable data that are not open data typically. They belong to the organizations that have commissioned the buildings. However, on the positive side, there is an almost standard for modeling buildings called building information models. And these building information models have rich detail on the architectural of the building, but also on the mechanical infrastructure built in the building, HVAC systems, pipes, electrical pumps, everything that makes the building livable. And we're lucky enough at the university to have a building information model of a very cool building called U Commons, and you will hear more about U Commons in the next presentation, where our team is actually instrumenting the building to actually know how the building works and to make it more energy efficient and to make it better and more comfortable for its occupants. So beams are a great innovation that are currently available to us, but in our lab we have also used alternative technologies, more traditional architectural diagrams data, in order to extract pretty high quality models of the interior of buildings. And the last thing that we integrated is information about the campus. So we need to know who are the people, where are their offices, what are the interesting landmarks, so that when you are visiting a campus, you actually not only doing navigation from one point to the next, but you're learning something about the environment. So that's the digital twin, the map. The next thing we need to do is path planning. That turns out to be sort of both easy and interesting. The outdoor path planning is pretty much done. We're using out-of-the-box services from OpenStreetMaps. The indoor path planning was quite interesting because buildings are weird. If you think about a building that has a row of offices around a corridor, that's simple enough. But if you think about a building like the First People's House that has been built at the U of A, there are big open areas, there are multiple corridors kind of fanning out of the center. So when you're giving instructions, go forward and turn right, these are pretty, they have to be pretty detailed because there are many rights that you can turn. So the path planning was quite interesting inside the building. So we have to use as many landmarks as we can, including the signs on the offices. So we have camera-based identification of the room that you're going in by simply scanning whatever signage is out of the office. The next thing is the localization navigation. This was the most interesting part and the most directly relevant to the 5G technology. Basically, we need to know where you are in order to be able to guide you through the next steps and in order to be able to replan if you get lost, which is what I usually do. So outdoor, we have GPS, and it's pretty good, especially if you have landmarks. Basically, you can tell people, go until you find the sweetgrass bear, and then you go forward a little bit more. So you don't really need to know exactly the coordinates. But inside a building, you have to be very careful because of the complexity of the buildings. You have to be very precise. And what we're doing there is basically we're using a machine learning approach to crowdsource data from multiple occupants' mobile phones so that we can build a high-quality model that map a historical sequence of data from one's phone to a particular location. This way, we can keep track of the person's location with accuracy that we hope to be less than half a meter. Now, this is ongoing work. Mo will not graduate until it finishes that. He may have millions, but that's what we're doing. The other thing we have to do is replanning, because basically people get lost. And that goes back to path planning and relocalization. So I'll show you a little bit of how it works. And we call the project Campus Go because it's kind of nostalgic. So on one hand, on the left-hand side, you see the outdoor path planning and the instructions. Now, this is not the most high-quality visualization, so we're working on improving that. But what you have to see here is the dot, which is the person moving, and the experience of actually giving instructions, giving information about landmarks. And that's something that we want to expand on for visitors and onboarding people on campus. You have information about where you want to turn, and we have directions including north, south, and also northeast, northwest. So I'm going to skip that. I honestly don't know how much time I have, but I'm pretty terrible at times, so I'm going to leave it for the fireside chat. On the right-hand side, you see the indoor experience. So this is a very complex navigation problem going from one office of our lab in another office into our lab. But what you can see here is essentially the same experience of actually following this tape from your location to another room. And you see here the room numbers, and you see the dot moving and following the line from one room to the next. And you see currently the localization using QR codes and signs we have on the buildings. The localization problem using the 5G, all the sensors of the mobile phone is extension of this work. But basically, at this point in time, we have a solution that works, and I think it's kind of cool, and Mo believes that it's a great entrepreneurial idea.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I would like to kick off this panel, actually, a series of panels with a little thank you note. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you, David, for the introductions. And Eleni, thank you for this really cool presentation and on this emerging technology, the potential of how XR indoor, outdoor navigation can revolutionize how we're kind of interacting with our environments is really exciting. And as you've mentioned, one of the key contributors in bringing this platform into life was your talented research assistant, Mo Adele. And the relationship that you have is truly exemplary, and it proves the student innovation support here at the University of Alberta through various resources. With the help of this panel today, we'll actually have a chance to delve deeper into how this into the journey of taking this groundbreaking research from lab to commercialization. And we'll have a chance to take a look at that through Mo's lens and his entrepreneurial experience. So with that being said, my first question will be to Mo. And Mo, so what inspired you to take the entrepreneurial journey with your work in Eleni's lab? Like, what was the drive behind pursuing an entrepreneurial path?
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me today. Thank you, Aiden. Thank you, Eleni, and thanks, David. That's a good question, but I would give Eleni credit for that for one reason. She gives me the time to do whatever I want. That's one. And I don't think that's a chance that is given to every single student by their supervisor. So if there's a supervisor here, I would encourage them to let their students do whatever they want. I always wanted to do something that is commercializable. Back in the time when, like in 2021, where the indie hacking thing was something trending on Twitter. And indie hacking is basically that someone is going to develop a product and ship it to the market and develop a monthly recurring revenue, and then they live somewhere in some island in Asia. And then they create this product that is able to generate them revenue and just stay, and you don't have to go on Shark Tank and apply for grants that is of millions of dollars, but all you have to do is just live for a month. And that was the beginning of my thought. I was like, maybe there's a chance that I would do something that is commercializable. And working with Eleni and working in her lab gave me a chance to have this time. I mean, she hates me by now, of course, because I'm pretty late sometimes. But she gave me the time to actually dive into programs and entrepreneurial journeys that gave me the chance to actually think about making money out of research.
That's great. Thank you, Mo. And you've mentioned how Eleni supported your entrepreneurial journey. So I was curious, Eleni, as the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Science, what are your thoughts on students looking to commercialize research at the University of Alberta?
So So I want to say that as a faculty member, as an advisor, my job is to make the most of the resources I have in my lab. And resources are the money that we have from grants, the knowledge that we have in the lab based on the people that exist there, and the talents of the new people that are coming in. So, of course, I would never give anyone the time to do whatever they want. That's what he understood. But what I want from my lab is impact. And there are many types of impact. And I very much appreciate the need and the importance of actually having real world impact with building systems that work. And the only way that the system can work is if it is sustainable through some kind of enterprise, whether it be social enterprise that keeps it running and doing things, or whether it is a truly commercial activity. Mo is the kind of person that is interested in that, and my job is to take advantage of his talents and the knowledge that we have to steer him towards this kind of impact. So more generally, as an administrator, from a vice dean perspective, if you want to think about that, I am interested in making sure that we offer enough avenues of impact. I want my students, when they write papers, to go and present them. I want money to send them to trips. I want them to have the opportunity to network. I want them to present in venues like that and either, be successful or fail miserably in some presentation. And I want to make sure that I am always current on all the opportunities for them to pursue opportunities like that. So I'm very happy that we have the lab to market happening at the U of A. The interesting thing is that sort of partially, mildly inspired by Mo, and I hate to say that because he will just be too proud of himself, I got encouraged to actually participate in a similar program called Spark Alberta. So I'm learning more about entrepreneurship because what I want is to have another system that is sustainable. We're focusing more on social entrepreneurship, which is another model, but in our lab, we want to make sure that everybody understands what they're good at and they have the means to try to pursue it. I hope this works, but if it doesn't work, Mo will have a great experience and he will use this learning from some other thing in the future. So that's what I think is the role of a supervisor and somebody who's more in managerial position.
That's great. We're really lucky to have you, Eleni, and especially Mo.
Especially Mo.
And yeah, Eleni, you mentioned Mo's learning journey, and I'm curious, like, to support your learning journey, what were some of the university resources you've used, and how did you learn about them?
I think this is working. Okay. The university resources. Well, I'm gonna be a little bit honest. It takes a little bit. It's just challenging to. It's challenging to know what resources are available. There are resources that are available, yeah, but it's challenging to know which are the valid ones and the ones that is going to give you an actual value on your research, or there must be a where to thing so that I could know, because the amount of resources are there's a great amount of resources, but I just don't know which one to pick. So using a lot of resources, I'm actually one of the members of the Student Innovation Center, where I get some RTX 4090s to run some stuff. And also the way how I have access to some labs at eHub, Entrepreneurial Hub. And the way how I have plenty of access to resources like the new University of Alberta platform, where you get AWS access, as well as Eleni's funding and Eleni's lab that I've been living for in the last year.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, and as a program coordinator for Lab to Market, I know that you've been a part of Lab to Market as well. And do you want to share a little bit about your Lab to Market experience and the customer interviews you've conducted, and what have you learned through those customer interviews? What were some of the key findings, and how did that affect and impact your entrepreneurial experience?
Well, it shaped a new perspective in me, especially when I first arrived in Canada. I didn't know how to, because I knew how to make like how to create business, like back in Cairo in Egypt, where I'm from. But in Canada, we have actual rules and we have actual legal system. So you have to follow the rules here, and like and I didn't know like the legal aspects of creating a business in Canada. And this was one of the key reasons of me not being able to do anything. And I wanted to know where to go in order to create a startup or in order to create startups because my knowledge in the West were basically about San Francisco's indie hackers startup, which is much easier to create there. But here, Lab to Market gave me the chance to begin exploring the entrepreneurial paths that is available to us and through like people who are willing to create a business. Starting with Lab to Market, I was this very optimistic entrepreneur who had this thought of if I could only capture 1% of that total addressable market and be profitable, which is nonsense. And then conducting the customer interviews, I learned a very good insight, which is basically solving a technical problem doesn't by any means mean that you are going to maximize value and create a generating revenue or create a recurring revenue out of it. And instead, sometimes you have this very big, complex technical problem, and you're going to solve it, but then you will just find this wall of, okay, people don't want it. People don't want it. They're not going to pay for it. It's not a priority. And then there's this small technical problem that when you solve it, or where you're going to shift your perspective towards commercializing with the same technology. For example, like Jeremy, my mentor, right next to me, told me about my idea when he shifted my perspective of the way how I market or the way how I should scale it business-wise. So that's what Lab to Market gave me. It's just a blueprint of knowing how to maximize value and how to find an actual value in your complex problem instead of being a nerdy geek who's talking a lot on the microphone in this panel.
Yeah, that's great. Honesty is appreciated, so that was a great answer. And just to provide a little information about the Lab to Market is a nationwide program focusing on commercialization and geared towards equipping postdoctoral fellows and grad students, equipping them with entrepreneurial skills and tool sets. So you've mentioned Jeremy's name, and Jeremy, you had the opportunity to work with Mo really closely. And what were some of the observations you came up with as you worked with Mo?
Great question. I mean, Mo's a brilliant guy. Obviously, I think he's definitely got that entrepreneurial spirit. I think with what I often see with a lot of research, and I work with, so I was an entrepreneur for 20 years, and I scaled a tech company. And one of the things that people always find interesting is that I actually majored in English creative writing, but I ended up founding and scaling a tech company. And really, I think the focus on what we've talked a lot about is really kind of identifying, who are the consumers, who's willing to buy and pay for what you're developing. The technology aspect of things, which kind of Mo alluded to, is really kind of that's the easy part of the equation, right? People are the complex part, and understanding their needs, their problems, and really how do you address those, and how do you convert, translate, and communicate that technology to the consumers or potential consumers of your product or service is really the challenge. So, we spent a lot of time talking about that, finding different ways to, how do you prepare yourself to pivot? So Mo alluded to, that we talked about kind of a different placement potentially for his technology, his idea. And I think that from an entrepreneurial perspective, and I encourage this with anybody, especially in research, is that we often get stuck on the hammer, right? So the hammer being the tool, the hammer being the technology, but how we wield that hammer, how we use it and where we position it, and putting it in the hands of capable people is really what we need to kind of try and address. And so with that in mind is that I'm always encouraging people that are building technology, focusing on taking their ideas and bringing them to market, is also keep in mind the ability to be agile and to pivot, right? So we know that geopolitical situations change, economy changes, the needs of people. We saw this during COVID, and the organizations, the entrepreneurs that are able to develop their technology in an agile, adaptable way, they're able to pivot and change, and that's really, I think, one of the benefits and one of the parts of working with Mo that I really enjoyed was trying to find ways like where else could this product and this idea fit.
Yeah, that's very insightful. And Mo, I guess that making that pivot was a really important decision for you. And I'm curious, like, what were some of the next steps you thought of when you found out that you need to pivot and find a different placement for your platform? Could you please elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, after conducting customer discovery interviews and trying to validate/invalidate my business idea or my commercialization idea, I began to actually think that is not a priority for, let's say, a customer segment or my ideal customer profile like malls or something. And then I started thinking, okay, there must be somewhere else that this idea could be adapted and actually create value. Well, thanks to Jeremy for that too, but I began to actually implement a new MVP and hoping for an actual, like, there's an MVP coming soon, and I'm hoping for actual commercialization in the next few months.
That's great. Well, that's fantastic. And Eleni, you've mentioned during your presentation that in the past you've also encountered some entrepreneurial activities. You were also part of the program called Spark. And as someone who had entrepreneurial background as well as academic background, what kind of mindset or personal development did you observe about Mo as he was engaging in these commercialization activities?
I want to focus on a point that both Mo and Jeremy made. I think what has been transformational, quote unquote, for Mo's journey has been participating and being in this space, both physical and metaphorical. So the Student Innovation Center, the eHub, the Lab to Market program placed him in the context of resources and people who have different perspectives. So if you live in a research lab with an academic supervisor, the standards by which you are measured are publications and citations primarily. Having the opportunity to live in two spaces, one is the academic, and Mo is making progress on that, and I insist on his success in that. But being in this other space where you have the opportunity to have interesting conversations from people who have a completely different experience and knowledge and skills, this is what drives the innovation part of it. This idea that, yes, you have a hammer, but it is not even a hammer. It's more like a Swiss Army knife. It has lots of capabilities, and you can deploy it in different ways because somebody else sees something in it that you didn't have as part of your process of building it. So I very much appreciate the existence of these programs and the existence of these spaces where people can get inspired and sort of forced to examine their work through different standards, not simply through the evaluation metrics that we're using. Now, as far as my entrepreneurial journey, I think I'm not, it's definitely a misnomer. I see myself as being academic. I have never had a real job outside school since ever. I have been studying or I have been teaching, and that's what I love to do. I love to be in a place where I have access to interesting ideas. I want to be at the leading edge of technology. I want to train students, but I also like to see the opportunity of impact. And for that, I have been working with colleagues from different disciplines. So working with civil engineering gives me a way of having impact to the architecture, engineering, construction industry. Working with health professionals from nursing or occupational therapy lets me use technology to improve the lives of seniors. So this is my way of actually having real world impact. I'm not so much motivated by the commercial success, but I want our technology, not all of it, but many aspects of the work that we're building to be sustainable and to do something in the real world. And there's nothing that is not impacted by digital technologies. There is nothing that cannot benefit from mobile sensors on people's phones. So there are so many opportunities for people who work in my academic area of Internet of Things and software engineering, using machine learning to make sense out of the streaming data and using models to kind of constrain machine learning in order to be productive. There are so many opportunities for me as an academic to have impact through collaborations with other disciplines. And that's probably as entrepreneurial as I want to be. But that's, again, the place where you get people who want to actually go and be even more productive in a commercial way, and this is the role of these spaces and these programs.
Great.
So you are not interested in money?
No. How much are you going to give me from this? Like, you know, this is part of my retirement plan, but I think I'm safe anyway. That
This
could
is how
be...
companies fall apart.
Okay. Nope, not interested in money.
That's awesome. I know we're almost on time here, but as a last question, if you could describe Mo's entrepreneurial journey with 1 or 2 words, each of you, what would it be?
We don't have time to tell you how I met Mo, but his entrepreneurial success in my mind is inevitable.
Inevitable. Great. How about you, Mo?
I'll let Jeremy describe it.
Okay, that's a great answer.
I think that probably, I mean, ambitious comes to mind. I think obviously it's a requirement for any entrepreneur. But I think that Mo's openness to evaluate and look at different perspectives and consume insight and information and be able to turn that into action is a very, very valuable trait that I think is definitely going to help him in his journey. So I know it wasn't 2 straight words, but so a word and a few extra words.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Eleni, Mo, Jeremy, for this really engaging conversation. Mo, your dedication to market validation showcases really key aspect of smart entrepreneurship. Eleni, thank you so much for your support and your commitment to universities. University's commitment to foster this innovative environment. And Jeremy, of course, as a mentor and business professional, your impact is significant. And could we please give a round of applause to our amazing panelists? And yeah, with that being said, I'll pass it over to David. Thank you all.